Let's talk a little bit about the fraternity, the history of the fraternity. I'd like to just share your thoughts, and you've been a brother of Alpha Phi Delta now for 40 years.
40 years.
I know. And as we...
Seems like yesterday that I was out here pledging under you.
Yes, under me. Thank you,
Yes.
Tony, as I am a couple of years older than you. But let's talk a little bit about the history of Alpha Phi Delta. How did we come into being?
Sure. Well, at Syracuse University, back in 1914, actually a couple of years prior to that, Cecilio Guarini, one of our founding fathers, attempted to join a fraternity and was rejected.
Rejected. And he was rejected because?
Because he was an Italian American.
Uh-huh.
And at that point, Brother Guarini looked at the list, the roster of all of the students at Syracuse University, and didn't find any other last name that ended with a vowel.
Ah.
Interestingly enough. Following year, he found 6 more, and there were 7 men who eventually became the 7 founding fathers of Alpha Phi Delta. They gathered, they organized. They first called themselves Il Circolo Italiano, which is
The Circle of
Italians,
Italians, right?
Italians, and put on a number of events in the city of Syracuse. They were actually quite successful, and decided at that point to form a fraternity. They sought permission from the university, and on November 5th, 1914, they became Alpha Phi Delta Fraternity.
Wow.
So 7 men, 1 chapter at Syracuse University. Now 18,500 brothers later, we're about to celebrate our centennial.
Well, 100 years.
100 years.
What are some of the contributions that you know of and you'd like to share with people?
Well, Rex, as we're celebrating our centennial, we've actually put together a number of committees to go back and research our history and enumerate those contributions. And we're finding them everywhere. We have 13 brothers who played in the National Football League, for example.
We do. Wow.
Right. We have a brother who's the general manager of the New York Knicks. We're the chairman of the board of American Express. We've actually had 900 brothers serve in the armed services, to the best of our knowledge, 30 of whom, including one of our founders, were killed in action. Brother Joseph Conjamila, one of our founders, was killed in a plane accident in World War I, and the other 29 all died in World War II. But we have about 925 brothers, and we're celebrating them as part of our centennial. There are 3 brothers that we know of who served as presidents of universities. One brother actually founded a university, Brother Peter Sammartino.
Founded a university.
Founded Fairleigh Dickinson University.
Now, see, you're telling me things that I did not know that one.
Several brothers were members of Congress, the governor of Connecticut. The accomplishments are far and wide, and even if you get below that tier of who are the CEOs and whatever, we have a couple hundred brothers, for example, who are judges.
I want to talk a little bit about some of the events, and I want to give you, Tony, a lot of credit because I know across the United States you've been holding lunches. So talk to us a little bit about some of the lunches that have been occurring.
Well, as part of the centennial, we want to reach out to every brother of Alpha Phi Delta. We want to find every brother and bring the centennial to them. People ask me, where's the centennial going to be? And I say, here. Wherever you are is where the centennial is going to be. So we've gone out of our geographic footprint, which is mostly the northeastern United States. In fact, if you draw a line from Colorado to Boston, down to Atlanta and Miami and back, that triangle pretty much defines the boundaries of Alpha Phi Delta. But our alumni have moved around the world. And so we've gone outside of our footprint, and we're holding luncheons and dinners. I was in Houston a couple weeks ago. We've been out to Long Beach, California,
and
Scottsdale.
Are those dinners well attended?
We're getting 12 to 20 people at
that's
each,
great.
And for the most part, these are brothers who, up until that dinner, believed they were the only Alpha Phi Delta man
in the area.
In their area.
There's a commonality, as we say within a brotherhood, there's in the bond of the brotherhood. I think that there's always something that draws people together, as the founding brothers drew together because of trauma or an inability to join another fraternity. If all of those men were able to join other fraternities, we wouldn't have Alpha Phi Delta. It almost drew out of the trauma of them not being able to affiliate or become part of another fraternity. And I think that common bond, or the aspects of that common bond, I know that we started through the Italian heritage, but we certainly have blossomed to become very eclectic as a fraternity.
Well, and that bond actually manifests itself in a number of different ways. And if you look at where we've been successful, again with our Italian origins, and although we were founded out of discrimination,
Mm-hmm.
we ourselves don't discriminate, and our
Right,
doors are open
right.
to all worthy young men. We have a lifelong bond that is different than most other fraternities.
How so, Tony?
Interestingly, and quite a bit of contrast to most other fraternities, our roots are urban, Catholic, private universities for the most part. That probably defines 60% of our chapters.
Mhm.
And whereas most other nationals try to get large numbers of men to live in their big houses at big state universities, ours is much more personal. Our brothers know each of their pledged brothers' mothers, and probably had a nice Italian dinner cooked for them by each of their pledged brothers' mothers. And 40 years later, I still get phone calls from our brothers at Duquesne University asking how my mother's doing.
Yeah.
It's a family, and it's a bond that is lifelong. And so as we have these reunions and we see people come back together, even though they're not from the same chapter, they have that same bond. It's what comes from being, having a great education at an urban, maybe Catholic, maybe private university, brings us all together.
Well, Tony, we have the 100th centennial coming up, 2014, as we mentioned. What are some of the events that are planned to celebrate the 100 years of Alpha Phi Delta?
Well, we have a number of activities planned, and a number of sort of deliverables, if I could use that word.
Sure.
Our Distinguished Brothers Committee, for example, is looking to identify, we want to identify 1,000 brothers who have made a positive contribution to American society above and beyond what a well-educated college man
Sure.
would be expected to do. And we're moving along with that.
And I know here in Pittsburgh, we are working with, and Vito DeSalvo has been working very diligently, and we have a CD out with Alpha Phi Delta songs sung by the brothers, and we're doing that. I also know that there's a history that was read by Keith Bernard, and Vito DeSalvo put some music behind it. I listened to that. That's outstanding.
Right. We are trying through every communication channel we can to reach out to all of our brothers. So the history, as Brother Keith Bernard reads the words of founding brother Ferdinand D. Bartolo, which, by the way, he wrote for the occasion of our 15th anniversary.
Wow.
Now, 85 years later, we're doing it. Vito DeSalvo has composed an original musical score to accompany that music. That's another way that we're reaching out. We're going to be honoring our military brothers at each of the conventions leading up to the centennial, and then at the centennial itself. We've identified one brother currently who's a general in the Army, who will probably attend our upcoming national convention.
That will be coming up. And then we have a centennial celebration in Washington, D.C.
We will be having a gala, a black tie gala, in April of 2014 in Washington, D.C.
So there's a date to get everybody down. April
2014.
Yeah, boy.
Okay. In August of 2014, we will be having an expanded version of our summer convention, and it will be in an area where there will be a number of hotels. We're expecting to just overrun wherever it is we go.
Well, that sounds very exciting. So, April 2014, Washington, D.C., and there'll be a lot of events. Look for those events coming up. We can read about them in the Kleos, and of course, we want to keep each one in our LinkedIn and through social media, so it's very important that you get linked in with Alpha Phi Delta. Tony, thank you very much,
Thank you very much
for your
Max.
time.